Toastmaster. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
I want to tell you a story called The Cellist of Sarajevo. Music is the answer to the mystery of life. It is the most profound of all the arts. It expresses the deepest thoughts of life and being, a simple language which nonetheless cannot be translated. That was by 19th century German philosopher Arthur Schopenhauer. Herr Schopenhauer said that music cannot be translated. I agree with him. But I will go one step further. I say, fortunately, music does not need to be translated. I can prove it. Every 2 years, a group of the world's greatest cellists and others devoted to that unassuming instrument, bowmakers, collectors, historians, gather at the International Cello Festival in Manchester, England, for a week of workshops, master classes, seminars, recitals, and parties. Each evening, the 600 or so participants assemble for a concert. At the 1994 festival, the opening night performance at the Royal Northern College of Music consisted of works for unaccompanied cello. There on the stage, in this magnificent concert hall, was a solitary chair. No piano, no music stand, no conductor's podium. This was to be music in its purest, most intense form. The atmosphere was supercharged with anticipation and concentration. The world-famous cellist, Yo-Yo Ma, was to perform that April night, and there was a moving story behind the composition he would play. On May 27, 1992, in Sarajevo, the capital of Bosnia and Herzegovina, one of the few bakeries that still had a supply of flour was making and distributing bread for the starving, war-shattered people. At 4 p.m., a long line stretched into the street. Suddenly, a mortar shell fell directly into the middle of the line, killing 22 people, and splattering flesh, blood, bone, and rubble. Not far away lived a 35-year-old musician named Vedran Smailovic. Before the war, he had been a cellist with the Sarajevo Opera, a distinguished career to which he patiently longed to return. But after seeing the carnage and the massacre outside his window, he was pushed past his capacity to absorb and endure anymore. Anguished, he resolved to do the thing he did best, make music. Public music, daring music, music on a battlefield. For each of the next 22 days, at 4 p.m., Smailovic put on his full formal concert attire, took up his cello, and walked into the midst of the battle raging around him. Placing a plastic chair next to the crater that the shell had made, he played, in memory of the dead, Albinoni's Adagio in G minor, one of the most mournful and haunting pieces in the classical repertoire. He played in abandoned streets, smashed trucks, and burning buildings. And to the terrified people who hid in the cellars while the bombs dropped and the bullets flew. With masonry exploding around him, he made his unimaginably courageous stand for human dignity, for those lost to war, for civilization, for compassion, and for peace. Though the shellings went on, he was never hurt. After the newspapers picked up the story of this extraordinary man, an English composer, David Wilde, was so moved that he too decided to make music. He wrote a composition for unaccompanied cello, The Cellist of Sarajevo, into which he poured his feelings of outrage, love, and brotherhood for Vedran Smailovic. It was the Cellist of Sarajevo that Yo-Yo Ma was to play that April night. Ma came out on stage, bowed to the audience, and sat down. The music began, stealing out into the hushed hall, creating a shadowy, empty universe, ominous and haunting. Slowly, it grew into an agonized, screaming, slashing fury, gripping all, before subsiding at last into a hollow death rattle, and finally back to silence. When he had finished, Ma remained bent over his cello, his bow resting on the strings. No one in the hall moved or made a sound for a long time. It was as though they had just witnessed that horrifying massacre for themselves. Finally, Ma looked out across the audience, stretched out his hand, beckoning someone to the stage. An indescribable electric shock swept over all as they realized it was Vedran Smailovic, cellist of Sarajevo. Smailovic rose from his seat and walked down the aisle as Ma left the stage to meet him. They flung their arms around each other in an exuberant embrace, and everyone in the hall erupted in a chaotic, emotional frenzy of shouting, clapping, and cheering. The audience was stripped to its starkest, deepest humanity, and encountering that man who shook his cello in the face of bombs, death, and ruin, defying them all. It was the sword of Joan of Arc, the mightiest weapon of all. Whether we create it or simply listen to it, music is a gift that can soothe, inspire, and unite us, often when we need it most and expect it least. Fortunately, music does not need